The book sleeve is in there, but it's an empty book sleeve. I'd left my book at home. Hello my loves, and thank you for joining me. It's Kirsten and it's time for a new weekly reading vlog. However, this weekly reading vlog is going to be a short one because on Friday I am jetting off to Egypt. So we're going to be having a weekly vlog just for that time in Egypt. So that means for the next couple of vlogs, they're going to be shorter ones because it's less days. So this one's going Sunday to Thursday basically. And then the Egypt one will go Friday, potentially to the following weekend just to finish it up. We'll see. I mean, you didn't need to know that, but this week is going to be a bit shorter because I'm flying out to Egypt on the Friday. So we'll finish it up before then and you'll have a separate Egypt vlog. And yes, I'm very excited. It's going to be fun and relaxing, but I'll talk about it all in that video. For now, with this weekly reading vlog, I actually have a theme in mind, and that is Greek myth retellings. So if you've watched my TBR video, you'd know I had 2 Greek myth books on my TBR. One as an ebook, which is Athena's Child. I'll get the name up when I actually start that one. That is the book I'm going to be reading when I'm at work, because I'm at work for the next 4 days. Why that sentence was so hard, I don't know, but there we go. I'm at work for the next 4 days, and so that's going to be my ebook that I will be reading while I'm at work, and that is a Medusa themed retelling. And the physical book I'm going to read this week is The Daughters of Sparta by Claire Hayward, and this is all about Helen and Clytemnestra. I've read multiple retellings about these 2 women in history or mythology, and I've loved them. I really, really enjoy the different depictions. Do I know the story? Yes. Do I know sort of what to expect, the storyline it's going to take? Yes. Is that dampening my excitement? No, because I love seeing how different authors are going to interpret it in different ways. So it's going to be so fascinating to see how Claire decides to portray these 2 women. I've seen it from having Clytemnestra being this vengeful, angry, horrible person, to her being really quite naive and not sure and not feeling very self-confident. I've had Helen being someone that is very vain and beautiful and has no regard for anyone and the battle and everything that she ended up bringing about, to somebody that again was very naive and just wanted somebody that loved her and just to have that recognition, and she didn't think that this massive war would spark, and you can call that as someone that is, as I said, very naive. So it's going to be so interesting to see how Claire tackles it, and what is she going to portray these women as, and how is that going to go, and how are Agamemnon and Menelaus, how are they going to be portrayed? Are they going to have a big factor in here, or are they just going to be in the background? Like, I love that. I love it so much. I love comparing them and seeing the different voices that these women get and how it gets interpreted. I love it, you know, because I have a slight obsession, and you would not be wrong. I really, really do enjoy it. So yeah, I'm very much looking forward to reading this. I might start it this evening. I've got not a lot I need to do today. I've got a little bit of editing. Okay, I need to get some editing done. I need to get a video edited and uploaded because that is due out on the Friday that I'm going to Egypt. So I need to make sure that's all up and done in time. And as I said, I have work for the next 4 days. So it's best to get it done today. And then I need to prepare for work and do dinner and all the other bits and bobs. So I am hoping that I can at least start a little bit of this evening. It's not a long book actually. It's only 334 pages long, so very much hoping to get through this, but that is the plan. Only aiming for 2 books this week because of the fact that it is a shorter vlog, but let's see what we get read. I mean, if by some miracle I manage to get this book done really, really quickly, then I will pick up another book, and I am thinking to keep in theme with the mythology, and if that does happen, then I'll pick up another mythology based book, so that we have this all Greek myth theme going on. But I'm thinking it's just going to be the 2, so that is the plan. I hope you enjoy it. Let me know what, like, if you've read any of these books. Do you like Greek myth retellings? Have you read many? Like, let me know all of those things. But yeah, let's get on with this week. But actually, before that, are you okay? How are you all doing? I hope you're all doing well. So, you know, let me know that as well. I want to make sure you're all okay. But yeah, okay, now I will go to save you the ramble and actually keep this intro under 5 minutes. Okay, that's a lie. Under 6 minutes, which is not bad for me. To be fair, I think that deserves a round of applause that we kept an intro that low. But I can feel myself, it's going to happen, the ramble's going to happen, so to stop it and actually still keep it under 6 minutes just, I'm going to go. So I'll catch up with you tomorrow morning, let you know about my initial thoughts on this. And yeah, okay, 6 minutes on the dot. Go me. I'm over this weather. I am so over the cold weather. It is actually ridiculous. I checked the weather for work later. So I'm working this evening and I thought, let me double check the weather because it's beautiful, glorious sunshine out there. And so I wasn't going to layer up quite as much. I'm so glad I checked because it's actually only 2 degrees at 6 o'clock this evening and I will be outside in that weather. So I was like, yeah, let's not do that. If I could just have summer back, that would be ideal right now, but never mind. I did read some of Daughters of Sparta. I haven't actually read as much as I thought I was going to. I'd really planned to do a proper big reading session last night, but that just didn't happen. I ended up obsessing over my editing software instead, so I've upgraded that. Whether you'll notice a massive difference or not, I don't know. But I'm really looking forward to playing around with it. I can do a few more different effects on it and the quality of the video should look a lot better. So fingers crossed, it does make all the difference. I think for me, because I re-exported one of my vlogs and I prefer the way it looks. But it's also one of those things, I think unless you're really paying close attention, you're not going to notice it that much. But I'm happy with it. But that did mean I didn't read quite as much of this as I had hoped. Instead, I've got to, I think it's chapter 6. Yeah, chapter 6, page 48. So we've been introduced to our 2 main characters. We're following Clytemnestra and Helen. They both have their own perspectives in this, which I really like. At the start of each chapter, you do get the name of who you're following. That's actually really helpful, I think, and I'm hoping, because we start off seeing them as very young girls, they don't feel that massively different. A little bit, yes, because the things that they are focused on and the things that they're trying to achieve are slightly different. So you have Helen that's a bit more obsessed with how she looks and she thinks everyone's jealous of her. You have Clytemnestra who's determined to try and be the best wife that she can possibly be, that she's like, well, this is all that I've been allowed, this is the only power that I've been allowed, and so I am going to make the most of it and I will be the best that I can be. I like the fact that Clytemnestra does think about those things. There's been a few sentences that I would have underlined in this, but I am holding off just in case, because the last few books that I've been thinking I would annotate, I then haven't enjoyed the whole way through. But there has been a few sentences that she's written about the limitations of being a woman during this time and how frustrating it can be, etc. So I like that look. But they do feel kind of similar. So I think if you didn't have that with the chapters and like the heading of who you're following, it would be a bit harder. That being said, I am liking this. This is following the true agreed upon series of events that goes on. In the back of this there is an author's note which I also read last night, and that Claire talks about how there is a lot of argument as to whether Troy was even a real place, whether this is just a myth or an actual historical event. How archaeologists have found what seems to be remnants of something that could be Troy. Like there's a lot of arguments to be made about it, and she's trying to create a book which kind of blends the two together, which I find interesting. So we do have Helen's parentage questioned at the start of this as well. Obviously in the myth, Helen is Zeus's daughter and he changed into a swan and raped Helen's mother. In this, there is rumours that she is the daughter of Zeus because of how beautiful she looks. But the reality of when their parents are talking, they basically insinuate that it was a group of men that raped her rather than an actual god. But I like how Claire's blended the two together. So it's like more historically accurate for the time, but also shows how rumours and stories can develop and how their faith in their gods will take something like that and change it into something that's a bit more palatable, even though it's not and it shouldn't be, but it's something that they can understand, and it gives Helen more of a, what's the word that I'm thinking of, like credibility to her, rather than just being someone that is spoiled goods. I say all this with like quotation marks and stuff because that is how they treat that situation. So I find that interesting. I do like that look of how we're blending the two. Like Claire gives nods to the mythology god side of things, but also puts a bit more of what could be more historically accurate. So it's interesting and I like that. So yeah, that is everything at the moment and I'm going to leave it there for today. I've got, as I mentioned, work today. I'm going to read this on the train to work, and then when I'm at work I'll change over to the ebook and update you about that. So yeah, that's it. I've had a really productive morning. It's actually only 10 o'clock in the morning and I've already done some yoga, showered, cooked for work, and now I'm doing this update. So I feel like it's really, really good. I'm actually meeting my partner for lunch because he's got to pop into the local town anyway. So we're going to meet up for lunch and then we're both heading off to work. But yeah, okay, well, that's me done. And I will catch up with you very soon, probably tomorrow morning, to give you first thoughts about Athena's Child, which I'm really looking forward to reading as well. It's going to be a good week. I'm really looking forward to this mythology reading week because I have such high hopes for all the books because they're mythology, and I think that's just going to be really good. At the minute, it's off to a good start, so I'm liking it. Anyway, I'm going to keep rambling. We need to stop. I've got a couple things I need to do before I leave, so I'm going to get on and do those. Well, yesterday I did a complete and utter fail, and it was hilarious. I packed my bag for work. I get it all ready all the time, so nice and ready early. Done. Lovely. And then I did an update for here. So I'd packed my book, Daughters of Sparta, did the update, and I thought I'd repacked it. My book sleeve was in my bag and everything, so I was like, oh perfect, it's there. Get on the train to work, very excited to read this on the train to work. No, it's not in there. The book sleeve is in there, but it's an empty book sleeve. I'd left my book at home. And why didn't I realise I'd done this? Because I left my bullet journal on top, so I didn't notice it. So there we go. I haven't read any more of Daughters of Sparta. I definitely want to read more of this, and I really want to prioritise it. I was hoping, I'd worked out if I read 70 pages a day, I was going to get this finished in time and it was going to be excellent. Yeah, that hasn't happened. So we've got plenty of catch up to do today. Fingers crossed I'll get some reading done before I go to work, but I will also bring this to work, read it on the train there, and etc, etc. So fingers crossed we will make a good, decent dent in this. So I have no more updates to give you on this book. The good thing is I now read ebooks, so thankfully I wasn't without a book all day, because that would just be heartbreaking. And I did start Athena's Child by Hannah Lynn, and I'm really enjoying this. I'm halfway through. It's a really easy read. It's also not a massively long book either. Obviously this is ebook, so the pages are a bit more, so I think in physical format it's going to be quite a short book. As I mentioned, this is a retelling of Medusa and I really liked it. So the start of this book, we follow Medusa as a young child and we see how she's really beautiful and her father is extremely worried because of this, because he knows what men are like. His own sister was treated terribly and was wanted by so many men, and she ended up with a very not pleasant end. You don't go into specifics about it, but it's definitely all implied. And he's like, I don't want this for my daughter. And so he takes her to the temple of Athena so that she can be taken in and protected by the priestess. So Medusa does. She becomes a priestess, and you hear from her time of being a priestess a lot of stories about women and the abuse that they have to deal with because of men. It's very raw, so I would check your trigger warnings, especially because it is very heavy. It doesn't gloss over any of it. It does explore it properly. So that was a new aspect on the Tale of Medusa that I haven't really read about. I haven't read many where they focus on Medusa's time as a priestess and the things that she had to deal with. You have Medusa who during this time is very much like, this is wrong, why do men get to treat us this way, women are the more rational and stuff. So there was so many amazing quotes in this first part, and I really like that. I actually quite like the fact that both of these books, we have Clytemnestra in Daughters of Sparta, who is very much like the same of feeling that frustration of the limitations on women during this time, and Medusa is exactly the same, and how Medusa kind of goes out against it more, whereas Clytemnestra is determined to be the best women that she can be in the eyes of men. So I find all that really, really interesting, and I like those two parallels. Then obviously we have everything that happens with Poseidon, the fact that he forces himself on her, and the fact that Athena does punish her for this. She gets changed into being a monster now because of her snakes for hair, and the fact that she can turn people into stone by looking at them. Her sisters also get punished, and again that's something that I've read before, where her sisters, and it is kind of commonly agreed upon in the mythology, her sisters were then going against Athena, saying how wrong it was and how she shouldn't have punished her and it's not fair. And then they get punished as well, and they have to deal with that. And then they retreat to this island, and that's where they're staying. So I like that. I liked this because a lot of the things that are in this book, how common things that a lot of retellings tend to agree upon that line of story, but I like how they can be explored in different ways and how Medusa as a character is explored. I am a little bit confused at the minute though, because where I left it, we just had 2 chapters from a very different perspective. Probably going to butcher the name, but we're having a woman that is being trapped in a tower because of a prophecy that her potential grandson is going to kill her father, and it's called Danny. I'm not sure on the spelling, I will put the name up here. So that's interesting because I haven't seen that crossover before, and I'm not really clear on that mythology. Like, a lot of the stuff that I talk about with mythology, like I love it, I love the retellings and stuff, but I haven't studied it. It's not something I've gone to school for or anything like that. This is just what I pick up from reading the retellings and doing my own little light bits of research on the internet, and I have read the Iliad, but it's like I haven't studied any of this. It's not something I've been taught. It's just something that I have a genuine interest in. And so I love it when something like this comes along that I'm like, oh, I wonder how this is going to play into it. And I know that once I finish the book, I will look into it to see, what is this mythology? How do they cross over? Or was this something that Hannah Lynn just decided to explore on her own? I don't know. And so I find it really interesting. But I was confused because I wasn't expecting it, and it was just a cut and paste change. I think we went into part 2 and then it just changed perspective, and I wasn't expecting it. But I am liking this book. The writing is really easy to follow, it's really easy to read, but like I say, check your trigger warnings. Obviously with mythology books, there is lots and lots of stories of men forcing themselves upon women. It's very common throughout mythology. But I would still double check your trigger warnings just in case. But yeah, overall, I'm enjoying this mythology reading week. Really hope I actually read more of Daughters of Sparta today, because that was a fail. I can't believe I did that. But yeah, fingers crossed. I do believe there is a second book as well, which is following Perseus. So that, I think this is going to be the lead up to that, and then potentially the second book will be following the whole part with Perseus. I'm not 100% sure. Obviously I'm saying this with only being like less than 50 pages into the book, but we're gonna get there. Wait, no, what am I talking about? That's a completely different book. Just scratch everything I just said then, because that is clearly not true. But I do believe Claire Hayward has done another book about Perseus. Don't ask. I don't know. Well, ignoring that waffle that I said that was clearly untrue, let's just move on. This morning I'm just going to be editing, not doing much at all. Yesterday was really nice. I met my partner before work and we had a nice little lunch together, which was great. And yeah, that's it. There is nothing else going on at all. So it's going to be edit and read some more at work. That's the plan. And then hopefully tomorrow I'll be updating you with further thoughts on Daughters of Sparta. Fingers crossed. I'm feeling really out of sorts today. I've attempted to do this update a few times and it's just not felt right, which is so weird. Like, I don't really get this problem like every so often, but I think I'm just really tired. Like, there's so much that I've been trying to get done this week as well as working that it's just kind of hit me today that I am feeling tired and that I don't know, it's not quite flowing today. But I do have a reading update to do for you and I really want to get it done today, so we're going to give this a try. I finished Athena's Child and I have very mixed feelings about it. It was something that I enjoyed. The first half of the book, you already know how I feel. I really enjoyed that half. I think that is the strongest point. Then I said we got a very different perspective and I didn't know who she was. Turns out she is Perseus's mother, so you've got a little bit of background about her. And then we change to Perseus' perspective and we get more about him and how it then relates to Medusa and everything that comes about because of it. My thing is that I didn't enjoy Perseus's perspective. And this is where I feel conflicted because I think this book is really, really good for an easy, accessible introduction to the Medusa myth. I think it does a really good job of that because it explores all the different things around it. You explore Medusa, you explore Perseus and the things that connect to that. And it's very, very easy to read. So I do think for that, this book is very, very good. I also love the fact that we are making the classics more accessible and breaking that elitist purview that everybody has to it. It is something that I love retellings for, is breaking that barrier. At the same time, I didn't love Perseus's perspective. I actually wish we had this book either solely from Medusa's perspective, or there is a point where Medusa and Perseus are exchanging stories about one another. So obviously we don't have the rehash of those stories because on the run-up you get Medusa's and then you get Perseus's and then they meet and they exchange stories, but you don't get the rehash. What I would have loved to have happened is have Medusa's story, then meet Perseus, and then Perseus narrates his story when he's telling it to Medusa. And I think that, for me, would have flowed so much better. Rather than what happened, which felt like two separate books stuck together in a way, because you'll get the first half, Medusa really loved it, loved all of those points. Not going to go into it again, we know what I thought. Then turn the page, bam, Perseus. And you're having his background, and then at the end, oh, the two come together. I would have preferred it differently, but that's just my personal preference on it. So yeah, I feel a bit conflicted about this one because I do think, like I say, basic background of the Medusa myth is very good because it follows that plot line. It shows the different aspects for it, gives it a little bit more of a slightly feminist twist to it in the first half, but you do, again, you lose that in the second half, which is just frustrating. Like, I wish it had been done differently, but at the same time it is good. So it's one of those things, like I can appreciate it for what it's doing, but I personally would have preferred it slightly different. Do I think it's bad? By no means, no. I think, like I say, easy to read, accessible, all the things I've already said. I just wish that chunk with Perseus's perspective had been done differently. So yeah. That's how I feel about that one, which is weird because I started off really liking it and then got to that bit and just didn't, it kind of plateaued. I didn't enjoy it as much. But I also read quite a big chunk of Daughters of Sparta yesterday. I'm now up to page 155, chapter 23. And I said at the start of this book how the two girls, so Helen and Clytemnestra, how they felt very similar. But I said how I think that is because they were young children, young sisters at that time. They can feel quite similar. You get little differences, but that was it. And I was right, because now that they're grown, I mean, I say grown, Helen's like 17 at this point, Clytemnestra's a bit older, we see them so differently. And I'm really, really loving it. They feel completely unique. I don't really need the names of the chapter anymore to know who I'm following, which I really like. And I find that the different struggles that they are going through is so fascinating. So we have Clytemnestra, which I've already mentioned a few times, how she was very much like, I'm going to be the best wife and all of this. But she is dealing with some struggles in her marriage about Agamemnon's faithlessness. He's got a concubine and how he's treated that girl and everything that goes around about that. So you have Clytemnestra struggling with that at first. She's really annoyed and very much takes her dislike out on this girl. But then she learns things and she's like, you know what, no, I can't. How can I blame her for my husband's actions? And you're just seeing her how she wants power and how she hates the fact that she has to control that inner fire that she has all the time, to come across as meek and humble for a husband that isn't even faithful. And I find it fascinating to see that burning resentment in her. And yeah, I'm really enjoying that bit. That's really good. And then we have Helen, and we're at the point where Helen has given birth to Hermione, and she is struggling so much with motherhood. She doesn't feel a connection to her child, and she worries about that, and she thinks about how she must be a terrible person then because she can't connect to her child, and you know how everyone's always told her that, you know, you'll love her so much when she's actually there, and she doesn't feel that way, and so she feels like she's a failure of a woman. And also the fact that she's absolutely terrified to get pregnant again because she had such a difficult birth, that she really does not want this. And again, she goes through feeling horrible, feeling absolutely horrible, because she knows that her worth is connected to the fact that she provides an heir. And so if she does not want to get pregnant again, then her worth as a woman was non-existent. Like, what is the point of her? And it's really, really interesting to see her going through those struggles. And it also frustrates me so much because that is the way it was seen of women back then. It's like, well, that's all you're used for. Your worth is your children. That's what your worth is. If you can't do that or don't want to do that, then there's something wrong with you. I'm finding that really fascinating. It's really given Helen as a character a lot of depth because you can really connect to her and feel the hardship that she is going through. So yeah, really, really enjoying that. When both these women, all they want is a loving connection to their husbands, and they're trying to be there for them, and both of them don't have it, and both of them have different troubles within their marriage that they are having to deal with. It's so interesting. So yeah, this has really, really grown. I'm really enjoying it. I'm flying through it. I am hoping that I will definitely be finishing this up in the next couple of days, which is perfect to end this vlog on. Not now, but once I finished it. It's been a really interesting reading week though. I've loved seeing the different myths and how two different authors approach myths differently. Like, I love that. I find it fascinating, as I've said in this video already. But yeah, okay, well that's enough rambling for me. I need to get on and do things. So I'm gonna go. Finally made it through to the end of this clip, which I'm pleased with. Hopefully we'll get out of this weird funk that I'm feeling and just get on with the work day. But yeah, I'm enjoying these books. I'm enjoying these looks at what these women are having to go through, and like I said, I think the first half of Athena's trial did that really well with Medusa, and I really enjoyed it for that. So yeah. Anyway, right, I'm just gonna repeat myself, so I'm gonna go. I actually finished Daughters of Sparta yesterday, which I'm so surprised at. Honestly, when I was setting out for this video, I thought I'm only going to have a few days to try and read both of these books in, and I have work. I don't know if it's actually going to happen, and thinking I'm going to have to try and squeeze in a wrap up once I get back off holiday and try and edit it all and get it uploaded within the same day, and it was a bit of a rush, and I was like, oh, I'm never going to be able to do it all. Except I did, because I am up to date with the editing, because I've been doing that every morning, and I finished both the books, which is fantastic. Out of the two, I very much preferred Daughters of Sparta. I really enjoyed this book compared to Athena's Child, although Hannah Lynn has done a book about Clytemnestra, so it will be really interesting to read that one. I'm not going to read it straight away. I like to give myself a bit of space, because as much as I don't mind reading the same stories, I like to have a bit of space between them. In this one, I just loved how the two women progressed throughout this story, how you saw them from children to then at the end of the Trojan War. Also, the time jumps in this I think flowed quite well. It didn't feel too out of place, and you got to see quite a lot of main events that went on. In Clytemnestra's story, I really liked how we saw the seer that convinced Agamemnon to sacrifice his child, and the backstory behind that. I find that really interesting. I haven't seen a backstory about the seer before, but it definitely made sense of what was happening. So I loved how Claire Hayward explored that. Also, what happens, like how Agamemnon meets his end, and again, everything behind that. Like, I've seen different renditions of this. I've seen Clytemnestra become someone who is just full of hatred and can no longer be there for her children. And in this one, it was different. Her children became her everything, and she did everything for them, and she actually managed to find some semblance of happiness. And then Agamemnon comes back and it all starts falling apart again. So I found it so interesting to see that in Clytemnestra. She starts off as a person that is very much frustrated by the confines that society has put on women, but is determined to do the best that she can within the confines that she has. Then she gets married off, and you see how she feels about that, how she's constantly trying to make the best out of everything. But you find that when she actually finds happiness, she realises how much of it was just fear, and how she could never truly be herself, and now she can. And I loved it. I loved how she had to balance things and weigh things up, how she was constantly having to deal with being a woman in this time, and the fact that she could never have a proper voice. I loved all of it. I found her to be a very strong character, and as much as things would get thrown at her, she would try and find the best path through that she could. So I loved that. I found it absolutely great. But the person that I loved the most in this is Helen, and this is the book where I think has done Helen for me the best. I've seen, as I've mentioned, many renditions of Helen as a person, but I think this one felt the most true, like most relatable. And that's because I think it did such a good job of showing Helen as a young girl, because that's what she is in this book. I mean, she's 17 years old when she's given birth to her first daughter. She's only in her early 20s when she finds Paris. All she's ever wanted is to be loved, and she's never had that. Her mother very much was never there for her, and you can understand her point of view on it with what happened in this book. But at the same time, having that coldness meant that she never had anyone. Being a queen also automatically separates you from everybody else, and so she's never had any true friends. Her sister, who was her best friend, had to be moved off to a completely different place, and she never got to see her again, so she lost that connection. And all she wanted was love, and she didn't find that with her husband. They were so distant from one another, and then all of her struggles with motherhood, it just meant that she felt so real. So once Paris came along and he was flattering her, and she fell in love. She fell in love with it all because she wanted so desperately to be loved. But then we saw her in Troy, and how she didn't get what she wanted, and how upset she was because she chased a dream of love and it ended up being an empty promise, and now she's in a country where she's even more alone than when she was back home. Maybe it's really stupid and naive to have thought that this was a possibility, but at the same time, She's a child. She's so young. She's never had that love and connection, and Paris saw that and manipulated it. And so why wouldn't you? I mean, if you go back to your early years, or maybe you are young now, that heady rush of love is something that you would do a lot for, especially if you haven't had the best home life. Of course you can. Like, of course you're going to feel that way. Of course you're going to make silly mistakes. Like, she's young. That's allowed. So it was just, yeah. I really enjoyed it. And then at the very end, when her and Menelaus are together and they're reconnecting, they both admit their faults. They both go, you know what, we were both really stupid. And he admits, you know, I wasn't there for you. I didn't have that connection. He was like, I didn't know how to be around you. You're the most beautiful woman in the world. So many men had come to try and claim you, and there you were as mine, but you weren't, because we weren't connected in that way. And then there's Helen going, I shouldn't have pushed you away. And she's grown now, and so she understands it more now. But she was very much like, he took something that I desperately wanted and played to that. And by that point, it was already too late for me to undo what had happened. It was so interesting to see both the girls' character growth in this. And unfortunately, Clytemnestra's ending is not as good. But it was nice that she had those few years of pure happiness when Agamemnon was at war. And now we see Helen that's kind of coming to accepting her role, and she can finally just be Helen, rather than having the weight of being something for everybody else all the time, like Queen Helen, Princess Helen, the most beautiful person in the world, Helen. Now she can actually just be Helen, and that's all she's ever wanted, is to be loved and accepted for who she is, rather than as an object. And it was just so well done in this book. I definitely want to reread it and tab it. I think there were some amazing quotes in here, some amazing themes that get focused on really well. I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. One of my more favourite renditions of these two women. I think it was done so well. There we go. That is the end of this weekly reading vlog. I know it wasn't actually a week, it was like half a week. But I've been editing this, so I already know how long this video is. And considering it's only half a week, it's still a pretty sizable video. But I have enjoyed it. I've really enjoyed reading some Greek myth retellings, and I think there's just something so comforting about reading a story that you already know. I was talking to my friend at work about this, and I said, oh, it might seem a little bit weird that I like to read the same storylines with only small variations in like how the characters are depicted and stuff. And she was like, actually no, that makes perfect sense, because she's like, think about Beauty and the Beast. We all love that story. It's been done time and time again, and yet people will still read it. And I was like, yes, exactly. And that is why retellings are such a massive thing, I think, because it's something so comforting about reading a storyline that you already know, but will be adapted ever so slightly, and then you can find your favourite versions of that story, and it's just so lovely. So yeah, my friend was very wise in what she said. But yeah, I hope you have enjoyed this Greek myth reading week. Let me know if you've read any Greek myth retellings, what are your favourite ones to read about, or if you haven't read any, do you think you would? I'd be very interested to know. But I'm going to leave it here for today, so thank you so much for watching. If you've made it this far, then let's put... ooh, what do we put for Greek myth? I don't know. I'm feeling a horse though, so let's do a horse. And oh wait, there was a couple things about this where the myth and gods and goddesses side of this didn't play as big a role, but I think I already mentioned how this book focused on trying to mesh historical events within this. And also Cassandra, she did make an appearance in this. She was very much a side character, but it didn't get talked about how she had visions, although there was a few sentences at the end where she was foreshadowing what was going to happen to Agamemnon. That can be argued that that's where it was, but it was very light for those parts. This was definitely more of a focus on these two women and their lives rather than the gods and goddesses, but definitely how the beliefs of people in the gods and goddesses shaped their lives. So I just figured I'd actually mention that because I forgot. But yes, okay, horse emoji in the comments below, and thank you so much for watching. If you have enjoyed this video, please do give it that thumbs up, subscribe and comment to let me know that you're here. Those 3 things are so important to helping this channel grow, so thank you so much. My social media links will be linked below, and I will of course catch you in the next video.